All right, so here's an update on our countertop. It came out pretty well considering we've never done anything like this before. And I decided to get a bit creative and I put little copper chips in the surface of the countertop. Wasn't sure how that would work out. It mostly worked out, but I put, in a few places I put them a little too thick, and so they definitely popped out during the polishing process, and it kind of looked like weird in some spots. So my solution, and actually to make the copper pop a little bit more, was to stain some areas into the countertop, which you can kind of see they're kind of bluish. You can kind of see the reflection of the copper in there. So I did this kind of bluish with a little bit of black in it stain, and here you can see our soapstone. I'm still in the process of polishing, but it is pretty close to what it's going to be at the end. The overall counter itself is going to become darker, so all the lighter areas, like in here, these are all going to be darker, so it won't be so contrasty with the veining that I put in the long run. But this is how it is right now. So polishing wise, you know, we weren't sure how we were going to do it. We were going to try wet sanding, were we going to do dry sanding? We tried the wet sanding and decided it was way too messy. Unless you're outside and you're constantly flushing with a hose, it's just not going to happen. We tried doing it with like buckets and sponging things, and the grit, we couldn't get rid of the grit. The grit was making whatever polishing pad that we were using even stronger of a grit, and it was impossible to actually to do it properly. And since, you know, we're not really set up to like flush this countertop with a hose, instead I went on Amazon, and that's what you'll see this little guy for. And I bought this. It was cheap. It was like 25 bucks on Amazon. Dust shroud, and we jury rigged, you can see the tape. We jury rigged a couple of hoses together. It's actually not connected anymore to our shop vac, and we actually put the shop vac out the window. So that way it's, you know, this shop vac isn't really capable of getting all the fine particles out of the dust before it blows the air back into the, you know, into the room. So we had it, you know, exhausting outside. And it actually, I gotta say, for 25 bucks, this thing was like perfect. It really worked great. We did have to jury rig it to fit our, again, our Harbor Freight buffer that we're still using, which now we have to tape the wire up, because otherwise there must be a loose connection in there. Otherwise it shuts off all the time, because this connection here is loose. But it's limping along, but hopefully we can, you know, finish the project. It was also cheap. I want to say it was maybe $30. It's a buffer, not a sander. Variable speed, works great. Works with the pads that you can buy, you know, on Amazon, with all the different grits for polishing. Let's see, what else? We did have to, I was going to say, we did jury rig this thing. It is a quote unquote universal, and it comes with a whole bunch of different collars and stuff for it to fit onto things. And it's supposed to fit, you know, most types of angle grinders. Obviously, we're not using an angle grinder. Ours was, the collar area is much smaller. All we ended up doing was using pieces of plastic shims and just sort of like wedging it on and then tightening it up. And, you know, it came loose once in the whole process so far, and we had to redo it. But overall, it stayed on really well, and it definitely works for getting all of the dust. Like, I didn't even have to wear a mask for the majority of it. You know, for the rougher first grit I did, but then it wasn't really worth it because there was no dust. Anyway, as you can see, you know, we're getting pretty close. It's not going to end up perfect. I would say, you know, if you're somebody that really needs your countertop to be perfect with no defects, perfectly polished, perfectly whatever, don't do it yourself. We're kind of all right with it being a kind of industrial look. As you can see, like our forms, we had like tape, and the tape still shows up in the corners and stuff. And you know, me grinding, I can't quite get into the corners as well as some, I'm sure, professional people could. And if you look at our edge here, we do have a lot of like little bubbles and pock marks. Even though we vibrated it like you wouldn't believe, it still ended up with bubbles. We fixed we had some bigger ones on the backsplash that we fixed with some slurry. But we decided that we actually didn't care that there are some imperfections, and it's not fully polished yet, but some imperfections and little bumps and lumps and whatnot on the edges and on the backsplash, because, well, our whole house is lumpy bumpy, and you know, nothing is perfectly smooth. So we're going for more of an industrial kind of honed countertop as opposed to a super polished, super slick look. Our little idea for putting in our little cutting board area worked out really well. We have the cutting board that slides in and out, and our soapstone as a hot plate area, I think worked out pretty well. We weren't really sure what we were doing with that either. So it's been a process, a learning curve here. Of course, we started with like the biggest countertop as opposed to doing one of the smaller ones, but we needed to get this one done so that we can get our CO. All the other ones don't really matter as far as the town is concerned for a CO. Anyway, so that's what I got so far. I'm about to do a second round of, I use this stuff here, I'll show it to you. This is the Diamond Hard. It's like a reaction type hardener polisher. We used it on the floors, and there was definitely a learning curve to using it, but it works great. And our floors are really hard. We drop tools all the time and nothing happens. So there's no chips or anything. So we're doing the same thing on the countertops. I already did the countertop once with it, but with all the polishing and the fact that it's a countertop, I'm gonna put another coat on next. And then after that, we had to order it, but we have some tung oil coming, and that's what's gonna make the rest of the countertop dark. Darker, the lighter parts will be darker because it'll be oil that we're putting into the surface to make it so that it won't stain, because it'll already basically be stained by oil. So that is our plan. I'll update again once we get a little bit farther.